Today, we're digging into a story that all starts with a single haunting number, 796. It's the story of hundreds of forgotten children and the one woman who just refused to let them disappear.
Yeah, 796. On its own, it's just a number. But what we're going to unpack today is how behind this one number lies this incredibly dark chapter of Irish history, one that was hidden in plain sight for decades.
So, what does it mean? It means 796 children died inside the walls of just one home for unmarried mothers. A local historian, and we'll get to her, she found all their death certificates, but that's all she found. Nothing else. No graves, no headstones. Absolutely no record of where these children were actually buried. And that really brings us to the core question of this whole explainer. How? How did one amateur historian with basically no official backing manage to uncover a national secret? A secret that both the state and the church had kept under wraps for more than 50 years.
Well, the answer, it doesn't start with some huge official investigation. It all starts with a single persistent question, a question that lodged itself in the mind of one person, Catherine Corliss.
So, who is Catherine Corliss? Well, she's not a detective, she's not a politician. She's a local historian from a town called Tuam in Ireland. And she was really driven by this memory from her childhood, a memory of the kids from the Bon Secours mother and baby home. It was a place the locals just called the home. So when she got the chance to write an article for a local journal, she knew exactly what she had to dig into. And this is the memory that really kicked the whole thing off. It's just a small, almost throwaway moment of childhood cruelty, right? But for Catherine, it grew into the symbol of a much, much bigger injustice. It felt like a debt that she personally had to repay. Okay, so how does this very personal mission turn into a full-blown methodical investigation that would end up shocking the entire world? Let's break down how she did it. First off, you have to understand, this was not some quick aha moment. This was a slog. For 2 solid years, Catherine Corliss spent her own money paying €4 a pop to buy every single death record from that home. By 2013, she's got almost 800 death certificates, but still, no burial records. It took another whole year before the media even started to pay attention, and then 3 more years after that before an official investigation finally confirmed the horrifying truth. Human remains were found in what was basically a decommissioned sewage system. And you can imagine she was facing this total wall of silence. Some of her own neighbors, locals in the town, were telling her to just leave them there, that this whole thing should have been left alone. I mean, people knew something wasn't right, but the message from her community was loud and clear. Stop digging. This was a part of the past that a lot of people wanted to keep buried, literally.
So why? Why did people want this left alone? To really get that, we have to zoom out and look at the culture that created places like the home in the first place. It was a culture of intense secrecy, and it was all built around one incredibly powerful idea: respectability. Yeah, respectability. In 20th century Ireland, this was pretty much everything. The family unit was seen as the absolute key to social order, and a family's good name, that was its most precious commodity. So anything that threatened that name had to be contained, controlled, and hidden. And this set up this huge, powerful contradiction. Look at the 2 sides here. On one hand, you have the state, which is supposed to be protecting the ideal of the perfect Irish family. But on the other hand, for any woman who fell outside that rigid ideal, well, they faced a brutal reality. An unmarried mother wasn't just seen as an individual. She was seen as a direct threat to her family's good name. And the solution? She had to be removed, institutionalized, and separated from her own child. And let's be really clear here, this was not just a case of individual families making cruel choices on their own. This was a system that the church and the state actively created and enforced. They put this immense pressure on families, basically convincing them that the only respectable thing to do was to send their daughters away. They were effectively being told to erase their own children from the family story just to protect its reputation. So it's exactly that system of erasure that survivors and advocates are now fighting back against. Their fight is for truth, for acknowledgement, and for a sense of justice that has been denied to them for decades. Survivors helping survivors. Their mission statement really says it all. It's simple, but it's incredibly powerful. It's all about creating a network for people who were silenced for so long, recording their experiences, and demanding, rightfully so, that they are put at the absolute center of any process of recognition. And through their own investigations, they've uncovered some absolutely devastating truths. I mean, just look at this. Based on those death certificates Catherine found, a full quarter of all deaths were just chalked up to debility, which is a really vague term. 18 children were explicitly listed as having died from starvation. And the kicker? Not a single medical certificate was ever found to back up any of these claims. They were just words on a page, fictions written to cover up what was really happening, neglect. So what are they asking for? While their demands are very, very clear, they want a full forensic exhumation of the remains and a proper, dignified burial. They want a real inquest into the cause of death for every single child, and they want death certificates that actually reflect the truth. What they're really demanding is justice for lives that were treated as if they were completely disposable. And all of this leads to what might be the most difficult question of all, one that Ireland is still wrestling with today. Who is ultimately responsible for what happened at Tuam? Well, it's complicated. The official state report that came out in 2021, it mostly blamed the fathers of the children and the women's own families. But critics immediately pushed back, saying that this view completely ignores the immense pressure coming from the church and the state. The argument is that they weren't just supporting the system, they were the architects of it. They created a situation where families felt like they had no other choice. But through all this debate and finger-pointing, one thing has become crystal clear. Catherine Corliss's work has finally been recognized at the very highest level. The Irish Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, called her a tireless crusader of dignity and truth. I mean, imagine hearing that. What a validation for her long and often very lonely journey. And this quote, I think, just captures her impact perfectly. Catherine is a beacon for these children, a huge light. That's really what she did. She gave names to the nameless and a voice to the silenced. For those 796 children, she became the beacon of light that simply refused to go out. And so that leaves us with this final question. After all the decades of silence, after one woman's search uncovered a national tragedy, what does justice for 796 children actually look like? And not just for them, but for the thousands of others like them. It's a huge question, and it's one that Ireland, and really the rest of us, are now forced to answer.